Work.
Hello, it's Monday morning. It's almost 4 a.m. here in Bakersfield, California. And where are you, Ed?
I am in Maryville, Tennessee. Not Marysville. We have a Marysville, California. This is Maryville, Tennessee, which is about, I don't know, 10 miles outside of Knoxville.
And why are you there?
And I'm here because I just finished a race over the weekend, the Three Sisters Ultra Festival. And you're at 4 o'clock a.m., so it's still dark out. Well, you can see it's bright and sunny where I am because it is 7 a.m. where I am. So I guess what we can do, I'll go through the route, walk the route, and we'll talk as I go. And, you know, any questions you have for me, certainly shoot them out. Well, first off, every race has to have them. There's our potty stops. They're and the cool thing is the race director you go inside and they had a vase with fresh flowers in each of them. It's like, wow, that's added a little cool little touch. But that's, you know, Southerners are that way. They do these extra little courtesies and things. Well, this is not Hotel Honda, but it's Chevy Honda. So this is my sleeping quarters for Friday night and last night. Saves me on Airbnb or hotel expense. Anyway, it worked. So I'll tell you, yesterday when we were talking about doing this and I was thinking about walking the course, I was like, I don't know if I'll be up to it. I was so wrecked. But it's amazing what a good night's sleep will do. So here we go. Well, coming down to, this was where they did all the festivities, had their aid station set up and nice little sheltered area. What I did not realize until after the race was over was what was right to the left of our start-finish area. I don't know. Can you see that okay?
I just see a field, but
all right.
Is it a lake or something?
Let me get closer so you can see what we had.
Oh, it's a graveyard.
Right next to us. Yeah, a graveyard, and here's the start area right here. So it's like right next to our graveyard.
Yeah.
Well, so there's the start, and then right off the bat, oh boy, looks like they did pick up the marker. So, well, then we'll just see what I can do. Right off the bat.
And mind you, Ed went 32 laps on this course, but he's not sure he can find it now.
Yeah, I know.
That's why
Ed I do.
He doesn't do trail runs or shouldn't do trail runs.
So here we go. Right off the bat, we're heading downhill. And I don't know how well the video picks it up, but right off the bat, it's like, oh boy, this is not going to be a flat loop, is it? And I came out Friday night and walked the course. They had the markers up, luckily, and it's like, oh, this has some gain to it. Now, it was hot and it was humid.
Yep.
But this is what we had pretty much the whole time, which is shade, tree cover. Yes. Well, along with that comes tons and tons of toe stubber roots. And I fell forward 3 times on the roots, but then we got rain. It started really pouring down at one point. And then it was like slick mud. And so one time I actually slipped backwards. Hey, looks like they do have okay, so here's what they did, which is really cool. All right, so there's markers here. And I don't know why. Now I'm a little bit confused. Anyway, the way they set the markers up is that, now something's not making sense here. Well, they set the markers up to the markers would always be on your right side, but now, all right, well, let's see what's going on. There's markers to the right.
Yeah. Was it like a lollipop where you went out and came back around or something?
No, there wasn't. So this,
maybe you went down the first trail. Yeah. So no, but it's interesting where you're showing the course and, you know, my limited, I mean, I grew up back east, but I moved to California when I was 14. So I haven't been out there since pretty much, but it's interesting. I do a lot of hiking, and in the high Sierra, we're up above the tree line, or even when in the trees, there's lots of magnificent views for miles and miles. And so it's interesting. People come out here and do the Pacific Coast Trail, or they do the JMT, and they're just inspired by the views. And then there's the Appalachian Trail, of course, it goes from Georgia to Maine, and people always love it, but it's, you know, difficult because it's short and steep. But also the thing is, like you were talking about, all you do is see trees all day long.
Yeah,
because you're through a tunnel, and so the view
yeah.
of the Appalachian Trail doesn't change. It's just green trees all day long. And so I know for somebody like ourselves, Southern Californians, where, you know, you can see for miles and miles, it's just a different experience that hiking. I mean, you know, hiking in out here out west is dramatic. You're in Colorado, you can, you know, hard rock, and so just interrupt you there, but yeah, so you got the course here, and you can definitely see it. It definitely looks difficult.
Well, with this tree lining, the one thing I never saw, okay, the race is called Three Sisters Ultra Festival because
Yes.
there are three mountains. The highest mountain is 2,800 feet, but
Yes.
I never once saw these three sisters. It's like, where are these three peaks? I never saw them. There's so much tree cover.
Yeah, most definitely. That's kind of been everybody talks about. And so, like, when I'm with my hiking friends here in California and they say, you know, I want to go do East Coast. And I'm like, well, just prepare to see a lot of trees, because it's, you're not going to see dramatic views. So, yeah,
No.
it definitely looks like the course was definitely difficult. I'm, in fact, kind of going over the results here. You had mentioned Luke. They show he got 106 miles. So it looks like they on the results showed him 2 laps in front of you. And then interestingly, they showed that Dave Compton, who I know that name, I've been to races with him. I guess he's from the area. He ended up getting 100 miles, but they clocked him after 24 hours. I know some races sometimes some races let you kind of, like, if you get in before the clock, the complete lap counts, and
Yeah.
that's.
What do you feel about that?
It's a 24-hour race, so
exactly.
I mean, I get it, but then I was going to speak on that fact because, you know, you've got this goal of going out and trying to get at least 51 or more in hundreds, and if you're doing these 24s, you're going to run into issues. Like, you know, I was watching you. I was, as I often do, tracking you throughout the day and the evening when I click on. They have a good website. And I saw you were going to be coming down to the wire, and you came down to the wire with 2 minutes and 22 seconds to spare, which over a 24-hour period is pretty small. And so, and you never had a bad lap. Your worst lap was an hour. Your slowest lap was an hour.
And that was an hour because I took a sit-down potty break and got some food in me.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'm telling you, I was sweating bullets once I did one loop, and then when I did that walkthrough on Friday night, I saw how much climbing there was. I thought, oh boy, this is going to be a bit tough. And so the whole, especially the last probably 30 miles, you know, I was thinking, I got to stay right on. I have no time to waste. I didn't do any, you know, took a couple of pee breaks on the course and run in, grab a bit of food and move on out. And boy, I needed and I banked some time, basically, if you want to call it that. I had some, you know, starting out 10, 11, 12 minute miles.
Yeah.
So here's something that we got to pass by. Beautiful. Now in California, we call this a Southern style home. Here, it really is a Southern home.
Yeah.
And so we'd see that, like, oh man, just saw that for just a second. And then we're going down this, and it really is a beautiful course. And
yes.
I think what they need to do is make it not just a 24-hour. Okay, so this, obviously, it's a memorial for somebody, but this is my little tap post. Every time I come by it, I tap it because, hey, I survived another loop.
Yes.
Alive. So, I don't. There's a point I was going. Oh, so I think they should make it also a 100-mile option and give it a 30 or 32-hour cutoff, because I think there's a lot more people that could take advantage of that. They're trying to get 100 miles here in 24 hours on this. The course itself is beautiful, nice, you know, lots of up and down. But then when you add in, it's the middle of summer with all this heat and humidity. Oh, that just changes everything.
Oh yeah.
So that's why only 4 people. So now we come back. We get to see the full view of that
Hmm.
beautiful southern home. So I think if they were to do that with a course like this, they could get a lot more people interested in signing up. But back to the thing that we talked about, a 24-hour race, and I got to admit it, there were a couple times that I've done like earlier in my running. Oh, before I talk about that, this I do not get. I don't know if you could see. It's like these concentric circles of bricks. I don't. It must represent something. I don't know what it's all about. Maybe it's some Southern tradition. Who knows? But anyway, there were a couple times where I had actually taken advantage of, I guess you could say. You come in before the 24 hours, they let you do one more loop, and these are loops that are 1
Yes.
mile long. But then, so we actually skipped a little bit, we're on mile 2. So
That's
I did
okay.
take a run. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one nice thing is, because when I was at a point where I was really sweating it, they have these mile markers at 1, 2, and 3. So as you know, anybody who's done these kind of events, you can't look at the whole 100 miles all at once. It's just, especially if you're having a tough time, you just have to break it down. A station to A station, which here our A station was at the end of every loop, so 3.125 miles. Oh, this is actually my favorite. We're on the 3rd mile now, so that's actually a good thing that we cut the course, because this is my favorite part of the course. This is the fastest mile of the course. So I'd be watching my time and know, okay, I'm trying to get a 45-minute, under 50-minute loop. I gotta stay under 50 minutes, and this is
Yes.
where I could actually pick up a little bit of time. But back on that thing about an extra loop, that especially at this course, it's like, wait a minute, I had to push my butt, and Luke ran into some issues as well. We had to push hard to get that 103 miles in, or he did 100. Oh, okay, I'll get back to that. But I had to push hard to get 100 miles in 24 hours. And then someone else can come in and go a little bit slower and have a whole, whatever time they want to get 3 miles in, as long as they cross the finish
Yeah.
line before the 24 hours are up. That's just not right. For a 3 mile loop, for a 1 mile loop, I still don't think it's right, but okay, I can sort of get that. You're at 99 miles, you crossed before. All right, we'll fudge a little bit, give you a little extra time. But a 3 mile loop, come on, that's like giving them
Yeah.
an extra hour.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, it's funny when you were talking about how you were under the gun the entire time. I was like, welcome to my world. When I was trying to do legit hundreds with cutoffs, I would have to do the entire race fighting the cutoffs, and it was just definitely difficult, and that's why I kind of moved to fixed time races. But yeah, I mean, not that we're gonna have a council on fixed time races, but it would be nice if we had a set rules on that, like an organization almost. But I mean, yeah, like people want more organizations, but like kind of like, hey, this is how it works. Because I mean, granted, you can do whatever you want, but it does make difficult, and sometimes the changes are on the fly while you're in the race. You got to ask, and it's kind of why people get upset and pissed off at me. I know a lot of people in the races are asking these questions, and then I ask the questions, and then race directors or fellow participants get mad at me because I ask. But I often say that these are competitions, and I'll even have people say, "Oh, Andy, you don't get it," and I'll be like, "Well, it's not a competition." And I go, "Well, then why are we counting laps and have a clock?" It's like,
Exactly.
yeah. And I've had race directors and people say that to me also, and I'll be like, "Well, you're certified and you're posting records, so." And then they'll say, "Well, that's for a part of the race," and I'll say, "Well, that's BS, because if first place is being under these rules, then last place needs to be under these rules, because who knows, the person who's way in the back someday may get good and then want to go for records, but you allow them to bend the rules, and so then when they finally, then you're going to have to disqualify them." So I mean, we had that case, and people have listened to my podcast, when I coached here in high school in California, we had rules, and like uniform rules, and some of them were pretty silly rules, but we would ignore the rules here in Bakersfield, and then these kids would be coached that way, and then when they went to a big meet and showed up with the wrong uniform or wearing jewelry or something, they would be disqualified at the starting line. And I remember often having like a young woman who improved great throughout a season make it to the state qualifying meet and be DQ'd because she had an earring on. Now the rule was silly in a way, and now they don't have it, especially when you see your stars all wearing jewelry on TV. But that girl didn't go to state meet because she had a nose earring. And the thing is, if we had disqualified her like I'd asked to do in the first meet of the year, she would have learned
used to those rules.
And and the thing was, later on when I wasn't coaching an individual team and was a photographer, I would look at all the kids before they started. All kids knew me, and I would look them up and down to make sure they weren't violating the rules, because it was the rule. And so, I mean, not to get off on a tangent, but it's kind of difficult, when you're in races and the rules aren't really posted, and a lot of it is just they're not coached up on it. So anyways, but side tangent. But so my question I had for you though is kind of with the issues of these difficult courses, especially if you're going to have to do so many around the country, how, if say you had been 3 minutes slow, this would not have been a success. And
no.
how are you gonna handle that? Are you gonna? I mean, in 2014 you didn't have an issue, but now it's 6-7 years later.
Yeah. Well, here's how I handle it. I move my butt, because to me, in my head, it was 100 miles or DNF. In my mind, it was nothing short of. Why would I fly all the way out to Tennessee just to do a race that I get 97 miles in? It's, for me, it's about the hundreds. And so part of the problem is me not doing my due diligence. I should have, now it's over, I'm glad, and I did it and got the 24 in, the 100 and sub 24, barely. But, the smart thing would be if I have two choices, like, if I end up going for the 60, look at all the races available on a weekend and pick the race that's going to be easiest for me to complete 100 miles in.
Yes.
And if people want to say I'm cherry picking, it's like, heck yeah, I'm cherry picking, because this race, it beat me up physically and mentally, like you said. When you're going against the gun, trying to come in under the gun, and you're, it's just so mentally fatiguing, because you just don't have.
I've been there. I've been
a minute.
Every straight up race 100 I've done, has been that way. I've done probably about a dozen where there were straight hundreds, and every one of them was just a constant pressure. You just can't relax. And so asking like that question, you used to have a tradition of where you'd go to a 24-hour race, and if you got time on the clock, I would be like, when you're trying to break the 40, I'd say, would you stop? You got 100, stop, cheer people on, and then you would run till the bitter end. Are you going to continue doing that if you do the quest?
Well, yes and no. Again, cherry picking. If I'm in a race where I've got my 100 in the 24, it says a 24-hour race, and I'm in contention for a podium, or especially a win, I'm going for it.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. But then it defeats the purpose of going. You have to. I'm going to say, and I'm talking about this like in terms of people listen to the podcast, in terms of like determining goals and then going for a goal, and often you have multiple goals that are going to hurt the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is 60 hundreds in a year, but if your goal is you're gonna, and say you get lucky and finish 120 hours, that 4 hours is super valuable over time, and so that's kind of. And so like I said, that's what kind of podcast is about, kind of like I want your thinking process. And you've talked about maybe doing hundreds in the middle of other races. Now, are you thinking, now that you've done this, and that you need to sit down and think about what you're trying to do and achieve?
Well, that's why I have friends like you to keep me doing things that are more sane than insane. But the reality is, there's no way to get more than 5,200s in by only doing one a weekend. So those crazy things like I have a race that I'm going to do Labor Day weekend, Lotsie in Oklahoma, where I'll enter the 72 hours, start with the 72-hour runners with a bib, and then get 100 miles or more in. We'll see, and then take my sleep break, and then have another bib for the 100-mile race, which is on the same course.
Yeah.
And do 100, and then if I have more time, maybe throw my 72-hour bib back on and finish up a few more miles. But that is going to be the only way really to go beyond the 52. I got to double up on weekends.
But on that 72, once you get to 100, you should be done.
Well, there's the question. Will I? I mean, because how cool would it be? I know you're going to say, Ed, stop it. You've got to be reasonable here. But how cool would it be if I could do a bunch of miles in the 72, go out and do the 24, and reserve enough to where I can comfortably do, because the 24, well, the whole thing, I assume the 100 mile, all of it is on a flat concrete loop. And most people hate that. I love it. That's my race. Mm-hmm. I'm a road runner, cut my teeth on road marathons, as we both did back when we were,
But concrete ain't roads. Concrete sucks.
No.
I don't like to cross sidewalks. Not walk on concrete. I don't like to cross the 4 feet.
Yeah, we're looking at little toe grabber roots like we just passed.
Oh yeah. Oh no. Definitely. Oh no, I get it.
But so for me, how cool would it be if I could actually win both races, win a race inside of a race? And quite frankly, as silly, or people might even say, well, Ed, that's just stupid when you get to where you're trying to do records. But there has to be something to motivate a guy. And this motivates me to have the chance of winning. And if that's what keeps me going, and because, I did 1 year back in 2010-11 where I did the most marathons in a year, set the record for that, which got broke shortly after. But I did 135 marathons or ultra marathons. Some of those were 100-mile races, but which counted as one event.
Yeah.
By the way, people go, oh, well, like when you did Badwater, you could fit 5 marathons of that. Is that 5 marathons? No, It has one official distance, 135 miles. It's one event. Anyway, so I did that 2011, 2014, a whole year of doing hundreds. And it's not only physically fatiguing, but just keeping the motivation to keep going out there week after week after week. And so for me, since luckily I am able to be fairly competitive in some of these smaller events, that's what kind of helps motivate me, is I want to not only get the finish, but if I can get a win or a podium. I mean, right now, this race was my 111th podium 100-mile finish. And it's my 87th 100-mile finish of top 2 spots. So, hey, if I can add that, to my list, and that helps motivate me, then, that's what keeps me going.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of the point of my question, playing devil's advocate, but also, the reasoning and thinking behind it, and definitely motivation is a huge thing, like I said. Oh, there you go.
Caught on a root, almost went down there.
And see, like my motivation, like in 2019, just completely disappeared, and I'm not sure whether it's going to come back. In fact, as you got to spend some time with her too, and Trayson was out on the circuit the past couple of years, trying to do 50 ultras in an ultra in every state, and the provinces of Canada. So she was out quite a bit doing stuff, and spent quite a bit of time walking laps with her. And a year or two ago, I got to, who better to say this to, the first person I ever said it to, I said to Ann in the middle of the night, I said, I'm not that concerned about my results as I used to be. Meaning that I just kind of was like,
And Trayson, who's won 14 Western states and set all kinds of world records. And now, because of rheumatoid arthritis, she can only walk super slow at that.
But you're
telling her you're not worried about your results.
No. But who's the best person to, the first person to tell the something? And she just, and anybody who's been with Ann, she has an amazing laugh, and she kind of like yourself. And so she just thought she just started laughing, and because she totally got it. She understood, kind of like I talked about, like how you tripped on the rock of Willie Mays. When he gets to a certain career, you just lose that little milliseconds and you end up on the ground. It's the same thing, like, say baseball. Eventually you're like, it's time to leave the field and move into the dugout and be a manager. And I'm kind of torn. There's certain times maybe I can rise to the occasion, but then there's sometimes when I'm out there and these things are so incredibly long that I just can't get my head around it. Like, I told you I went to 6-day last year, and a lap before I realized I was miserable, not having any fun. And part of it too is I myself was miserable, and I could have stuck around and maybe got to 200, but I had no interest in that. But I also didn't want to just make my presence harm other people's presence, in terms of like, I was just not having any fun. I didn't really want that to bleed into the rest, especially that place is so tiny and small that I just didn't want to be gloomy. I mean, I'm kind of gloomy anyways.
You know what? That is, I commend you for that, because you and I both know that attitude is everything. And one of the worst things on a course, you hook up with somebody, you think, okay, I could chat with this person. I need someone to help me take my mind off of this, what I'm going through. And then they're just negative Nelly or Debbie Downer.
Yeah.
And it's an energy vampire. They're just like sucking the energy out of you. And you're like, you know what? Hey, good chatting with you. I got to hit the bathroom over here. So that's cool that you could see that you weren't going to be on a little 400-meter track where you're constant with people, knowing, hey, I'm not able to do what you and I both love to do is help encourage people on the course for whatever they're trying to do. Hey, you got this. You're looking good. And if you knew you weren't in that mindset, that's commendable that you would decide, I got to just get out of this because I'm not going to help anybody, not help myself.
And I'm just bringing the energy down. Actually, there's a comedy show kind of like The Office. I think it's something What We Do in the Shadows on Hulu or something. And actually, it's about vampires. But one of the 4 vampires is actually an ordinary, boring guy, and he's an energy vampire because he just sucks the life out everywhere he goes. It's absolutely, I'm on the ground, hilarious. What was really kind of amazing, too, was there's this guy named Mario, and I forget his last name, but he's actually a centurion back in the 80s. He walked 100 miles in 24 hours, which is something I would love to see you try and do. Go to one of these races with the official. You don't have to do the silly race walking thing. You just have to keep one leg on the ground. So you definitely pass.
Yes.
But anyways, he saw me stop and pack up, and he comes up to me, and we've got to know each other, and across the years, and he says, "What's going on, Andy? What are you doing?" And I just go, "I'm miserable. I'm not having any fun, and so I'm going home." And he was the perfect person. He was the first person I told I was leaving, and it turned out he was the perfect person. And he goes, "Andy," he goes, "I left the sport 30 years ago and I just came back." So
wow. Yeah. That is a break.
yeah. Because he was crushing it in the 80s. I mean, sub 2400, and then he just kind of left, and then he kind of came out to cross years a couple years ago, and he's now enjoying it in his 60s. And I was like, yeah, I want to, and so definitely kind of a situation where, so, like I said, so you got this goal. It's like I said, that course, though beautiful, I would definitely not want to do. It's interesting. I was last night bored, and I went on to YouTube because heaven knows I got Netflix and all these other things. I couldn't find anything to watch, and I watched this documentary on the 2019 backyard in Tennessee.
Oh yeah.
And the course looks a lot, that 4.1 mile course they have looks a lot like what you were just on.
No.
I didn't realize how hard it was. Oh yeah.
Because you know what? I've been thinking about doing one of those, but forget it now. Now you told me that.
The original, the OG, the last course, his backyard.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, it looked worse than what you just showed.
Okay.
It's like a single track, and they had some guy who did the movie. He was from Europe, Northern Europe, like Swedish he was from Denmark. And yeah, he's like the rocks and the slippery, and it's single file. Like when you're doing that race, you basically conga line it the entire time. And he said, unfortunately, in the beginning, he got in the wrong part of the conga, was going too hard. So 10 hours in, he ended up getting 28 hours. But the great thing was Maggie was there, who of course won it. But it was that loop is very, very technical. Of course, at night they go on to the pavement, but that day loop, man, it was.
And something like that, a last man standing race where the only finisher is the last person. That wrecks you. If you're out there, I mean, I don't know, I've never done it, but just looking, it looks to me like it just destroys you. And you're right. I want to be able to do this stuff for a while.
Yeah.
And so I have to be more selective on, what's going to help me accomplish my goal and keep me motivated. And so here's back to the finish. So we actually cut out, about a mile and a half of the course, which was, you got a chance to see what it looked like anyway. I'm going to come over and sit next to the cemetery, and we can continue chatting. But yeah, definitely being aware of your core. Oh, so let me show you what what happened here. Oh, cool looking dog. All right, so my shoes, my Ultras, I've just worn them completely out, and I have 3 pair that all have, for some reason, my right foot, I wear a big hole in the heel.
Oh yeah.
So I did something really crazy, and I don't think I told you this, because if I told you this, you said, Ed, that is so stupid, don't do it. I actually wore 2 left shoes. So let me show you what happened. There's my 2 left shoes. See my big toe sticking out there? I don't know if you can see that or not. So that was, really tight. And this is probably, Ultras are probably the only shoe you could do this, because they have such a wide toe box. And when I first started wearing Ultras, I thought, these look like duck shoes, but then you get used to it.
Yeah.
But I actually, by mile 20, I tripped up on a rock and my toe just popped right through that. And I ran the rest of the race that way. So, and it's okay. It worked. The only bad thing is here, there's no real, well, the cushion is just different. And so when I'd hit,
and those shoes you're wearing are, no, I have a pair of those lightweight racing flats that are made for like running a 5K in.
I know.
You know what I wear them for? When I was door dashing, they were my driving shoes. They're like slippers.
They're like slippers. They
have no tread.
But,
they have no padding, and you're absolutely.
But compared to a shoe that has a hole in the bottom, I should show you.
Oh, I know. But
I just ordered new Ultras, a new Paradigm, and they should come in before my next race. And so I'll show up on my next race with new shoes. You know what? Maybe that's the race I might win. I had I'm a numbers guy, so I'm always looking at numbers and playing around with numbers. That helps to motivate me, just the way my brain works. But 2 weeks ago when I did Honey Badger, that was a 4.3. I was 4th overall, 3rd male. This weekend was 2. So look at the numbers: 4, 3, 2. What naturally comes next? So maybe when I get my new shoes,
I still can't believe you. I can't believe you. I wore that shoe. Those shoes are like.
I know.
I don't think I can walk a mile or 2 in those shoes. I got them. Here's a trick that for everybody out there too. I mean, I love supporting various local businesses and shoe stores and stuff. But you know what? I started buying my shoes on eBay. I was an eBay seller back in the day. I was a power seller when I had record store for 20 plus years. And I realized a few years ago, I'm doing 300-400 mile weeks, not 300 or 400 mile months that I'm going through shoes. I get them on eBay now, and you can get some you get new ones for $40 or $50, and you can get slightly used ones, which for you would be a brand new shoe for like $20-$30, and you just put an eBay alert and buy them off of eBay. And I've been getting my shoes off of eBay for the past couple of years, and I do wear Ultras. Hooked up with them in 2014. I was at Cross Sears, and the first day of the 6-day race, and I saw people running by on the shoe, and I was like, what is that shoe? And I need it because I had Hoka's, and Hoka's sort of worked, but then they got even narrower and skinnier, and the rest is history. So that's just, you can wear them. I know you used to often wear 2 different models on different feet, and
this was a first. Not only wearing 2 different models, but I actually ran a 100-mile race with 2 left feet, basically.
Yes.
I mean, reality, I did.
Yeah.
But I won't do that again. But it goes to show what the human body is capable of doing. You don't have to have the perfect shoe. Like, I think too many people when they race, they want everything to be, I got to have the right shoe, got to have the right. It's not equipment. I mean, you could put you could take someone in the top of their sport, give them the crappiest piece of equipment. They're still going to beat you hands down every single time. Yeah. And you can have the best. So when they start talking about, they had an unfair advantage because they had this certain type of equipment, it's like, you know what? Unless it's cheating, something they're doing that's actually, not legal in sport. They trained. The equipment just enhances what they've done, all the time and effort they put into training their body to be at that point. That's why the guys who do the Luna sandals, I'll never run in Luna sandals, but I have friends who do even 100-mile races in Luna sandals, and it's because they've conditioned their feet to where they can handle it. I mean, look at the Tarahumara Indians. They take a piece of rubber tire and a leather, thong and straps and tie it onto their feet and do 100 miles. So.
Well, yeah, that's something that I've always advocated throughout my career, athletic career, in terms of technology. But it's also because you just want to keep it simple, stupid. And like I just did this weekend, I do podcasts like called Dropping Science, and one of the things that's kind of cool is following the Great Race Across Tennessee. Facebook, mainly follow it just for Laz's words, but also for the entertainment value of people talking about all the gear and technology that they need. And like someone was mentioning, talking about orthotics, and like 10 years ago, orthotics were proven to be BS. And so I found the New York Times article talking about that, like, you can give a guy 5 different pairs. There's no rhyme or reason to them. They're just, in fact, the scientists were saying that they don't really work, but and then the guys who make them, who aren't scientists, going, yeah, but people feel better in the shoes. And so it's this whole, in our whole world now, it's facts versus feelings. And but
is a factor.
But like when I'm at races, especially loop races, because it's like going to grad school for running, you see people, they've got to have their KT tape, they've got to have their compression socks, they have to have their special socks. There are so
special
many
music.
Yeah. And so they're just, and what they're doing is they're setting themselves up for failure. They're giving themselves excuses, so then when the race doesn't go well, they can blame the socks. And I mean, I've done that where I use Ultra, which don't give me no shoes. I wear Smart Wool socks, which I've been wearing for years, and I have at times worn a hole in the Smart Wool, and I learned a trick a long time ago: turn them upside down. Run on the top, and you can continue on because you had a hole in it.
Interesting.
And even though if you get that little tiny hole, you need to flip it over. And so I've flipped it over, and you basically run on the top of it. And it feels a little odd, but it works.
Well, see, I'm not so odd then. Wearing a left shoe on my right foot, you flip over socks. I just switch shoes. That's no big deal.
It's a little, but
different.
But I'm saying it's just that a lesson people need to learn is, I often say, like, stop being so precious.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and it's a tough sport. If you want to, maybe ultra running 100-mile races isn't your sport if you need to have everything
but this
right.
this is like in 5Ks and stuff, and people have these elaborate rituals or elaborate things that have to, and so I'm always like, if all this stuff's going to go right, you're just setting yourself. But I mean, a lot of people do set themselves up for failure because they don't do it on purpose, but it's a way to just it makes us sound like we're just super old school, and we're we're old school in terms of, like, you're talking about winning and podium and stuff. Don't you know we're all just supposed to get a participation ribbon and be patted on the back? I mean, and no disrespect to anybody, but a 5K, you finish a 5K, I'm one of the people that's going to be cheering you on and be total respect for it. But there's still that element of competition. What's the point of having timing and keeping places if we're not trying to go out there and get, I tell people all the time. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, you go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, really, truthfully, we're competing, especially the longer distance you get or the longer time, you're really competing against the clock and yourself. The clock, if it's a fixed time event, and your age, there's a clock there. And that's the ultimate goal is, I look at, I'm getting older, and at some point, winning races just isn't going to be even a viable option for me. I'll just, hopefully that won't be until I'm 70, but I'll turn 58 here in a couple of weeks. And, the bottom line is, at that point, when I no longer can run races competitively with others, I'm still going to be trying to do the best that I can do. And for that, I need to see a clock and get an official.
Well, and also your competitors you're competing against are the ones who are pushing you to get the maximum out of yourself. In fact, the big yard race, that's what they're talking about. That it is a race against yourself, and in that race, you actually need the other person to say, "Okay, let's go do another lap." Because when they decide not to do another lap, your race is done. So if you show up at a big yard race and someone quits at 96 miles, you don't get your 100, because that's the rules.
Oh, you have to do one more lap than them, but you're right. If they quit, you can't do more than one more lap. You're right.
Yeah, you want to show up for 300. So yeah, that's just kind of.
Well, those are out then. I'm gonna definitely during my quest for 60 know the backyard things, because you're right. If whatever the field is not very competitive, or it's too tough of an actual course.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, oh, this could be 100 for me if I just stay in for 25 hours. But yet, if the last person or the second to last
stops
person
at 22,
then I'm stuck. I can't
yeah.
keep going. They're not going to stick around and say, oh, Ed, yeah, we know you want 100. We'll just stick around here for the next day. You go ahead and do your loops.
No. They have to go out and do the loop with you.
No, I'm talking about the race. Yeah.
Well, no. The race ends in a backyard.
Right.
If person times out at lap 22, say of lap 22, the races you can only do 23.
Yeah, if it's a 1 mile.
You can't keep doing laps, so you'll end up at 96. Yeah. So, but that's just kind of the derivation. But so that's what I was saying is just that you have these situations, and like I said, you running with what you had is to the extreme, but it just shows you that it's not about all the gizmos and the gear. And like I wish a lot of these races, how everybody's setting up all their tents and all this stuff, I really wish they wouldn't allow that stuff. If anything, there's kind of a silver lining. Let me continue. Let's say there's a silver lining with this COVID stuff, that maybe we'll get away from these massive crews and setups and stuff, in terms of, like, I saw a big change. Like I did San Diego 100 for a couple of years. I timed out at mile 75. Then the next year was super hot. I didn't get to 50. And then the third year I was just crewing and pacing. And that was the year of the Ironmen. All the Ironman boys realized ultras were cool, and so they decided to come out and do ultras. And they had these entourages and gigantic SUVs, and they'd have 15 people watching one person. They'd roll in, take up everything, not pay attention to anybody in the race. Once their guy was gone, they were gone. And it was like, it all became like this gigantic team sport kind of thing. Speaking of COVID, was there any kind of things different at this race in terms of?
I'll tell you what, honestly, you wouldn't even know. It's a different world out here in Tennessee, Kansas. I'll go to Kentucky next week. It's I mean, definitely it's a serious virus, and people get sick and people die, but their attitude is just different here. So I came with my my mask. I came out to the start line, and the weird thing is, in California, if you go anywhere without a mask on, you're mask shamed. Here, I felt out of place. I mean, I looked around and nobody. It's like, all right, then, and I pulled it down, and that was that. Which is, I'm okay with it. But it's a bit of a different attitude out here. Or maybe it's some of it's the Southern attitude, and I don't know. But it was nice to kind of get away from that a little bit. But next week's couple. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, the big concern, and they had it with the quarantine backyard ultras, is saying that, if you're doing this, and obviously the toll on your body, so your immune system and whatnot, it's going to be getting down in terms of, precaution wise, you're healthy and stuff, but it is a concern. And, it's, I often tell people, I'm way overeducated. I have a degree from University of California, San Diego in physiology. So I understand biology and the science of that, and have, unlike most doctors, is a whole other story. I actually continue reading and learning, where they just go to pharmaceutical rep things and don't learn jack. So most of your typical doctors never cracked a book open since he got out of med school. It's the way it is. Not to go. What's that?
No, I know that directly, because I'm a CPR instructor. That's my profession, and I specialize in dental offices. But do you know that MDs in California, I can't speak to other states, but once an MD gets out of
graduate,
yes, once they leave the hospital setting, if they set up private practice, they are not required to be CPR certified. Now, if they have hospital privileges, the hospital requires that they have CPR. But I've spoken to doctors who haven't had CPR training in 20, 30 years. They're licensed, fully practicing, which is funny, because there's the old phrase whenever someone goes down, is there a doctor? Like in an airplane, if someone passes out, is there a doctor? Is there a doctor? Where they should be saying, is there a dentist or a nurse or dental hygienist, or people who are required to be CPR certified? So I get what you're saying about that.
So like I'm saying, I have that scientific background. I'm a big believer in DNA, all that stuff. So I understand that part. And then I went back to school, and my son went to school, and I have a degree in sports economics, where you get killed on all the statistics and stuff like that. So I understand statistics. So I had the science background, I have the stats background, and what's going on now still blows my mind, and I don't fully understand it and accept it, or blah, blah, blah. And so I can imagine that, you know, your general lay person who doesn't have my background to wrap your head around the whole thing. You know, I don't want to get all political here, but I was just kind of curious how, you know, because here in California, they're talking about, you know, volunteerless aid stations and all kind
well,
you know,
I wanted to
staggered start.
address that. So this race, this is the third day to be rescheduled, but my race I'm going to next week, it's self-crewed. It's a 2-mile loop, but they'll provide water, and that's it. They have no aid station, basically, and because of COVID-19. Now, the crazy thing is, so I'm always looking for the best flights I can get, and so I'll look here in Southern California. I've got luckily the option of going to San Diego, which is the favorite airport for me to fly out of because it's within an hour from my home. But San Diego, Long Beach, LA, John Wayne Airport in Orange County, and there's also Ontario. But sometimes I'll look even Las Vegas, which is a 4-hour drive for me. But if it's like half the price, I'll drive and fly out of Las Vegas. Well, for Kentucky, I'm flying out of Las Vegas, and I'll come in. Well, I was scheduled to get into Cincinnati because this is in Kentucky, but it's 90 miles from the closest airport, 90 miles away. Unlike this one, I'm like 15 minutes from the airport. This is amazing. And the same thing with my race 2 weeks ago in Kansas. You know, we were 20 minutes from the race venue from the airport. But anyway, so my flight was scheduled to come in at like 1 in the morning, which is fine, and get a car and sleep in the car for a few hours. But I got a notification that the airlines rescheduled my flight without even checking with me, and my flight now arrives in Ohio at 5:30 in the morning. It's a race start at 8 in the morning, 90 miles away. Plus, I have to be self-crewed, so I've got to go buy my stuff. So I got to get in touch with the race director and say, hey, can you help me out a little bit here? You know, I'll bring what I can, but I'm trying to do just single carry-on. Anyway, that's going to be a challenge, and that's part of the doing these. And that's why I wanted to do these like 9 or 10 in a row, just to kind of like a shakeout, figure out, what's all involved in logistics and all that kind of stuff. Again, get my mind back into that where I spend, 2014 last time I did that, so many in a row. But that's one of the things you have no control over. But that race, they specifically went to no crew, no aid station. They're going to provide water, and that's it, which is cool. And speaking of so there's 3 things I want to talk about. That was one, how COVID has affected races. That they're definitely, it's a big effect on that one, because that's the only way they would put it on. And it's like, okay, I'd rather have that than no race at all.
Yes.
So we'll adapt. But I agree with you with the races. I love now that some of the races, 100-mile races, have a solo division where you get like San Diego 100. They want to minimize traffic, probably because of what you were talking about. And so they now made a solo race where you have no crew. You can have people at the start line and at the finish line. That's it. None of your people can go out on the course. You can't have any pacers. And that's how I run. I think they could go even a step further. And this is crazy, but no crew, no drop bags. I'm not opposed to drop bags, but when people bring like a suitcase for every drop spot, it's like, really, guys? I have a little pouch and I put my flashlight, a little windbreaker, my battery charger so I keep my Garmin going. And toilet paper, I'll put some extra toilet paper there in case I got to, stop in the woods and do my business. But and that's it. And I run the whole. And of course, I got my vest with my water bottles. I maybe tuck a few things into that. But these drop bags that people, it's like, I don't know. This is supposed to be pushing you, challenging you physically, and having the benefit. And I shouldn't say this because some people, that's the only way they would do it. So more power to them. But have it to where you've got, and I could see it on your first 100. This I get too, because it's a special experience, and you want your family to be there and help you, and you need that.
But it goes all to the point of our culture of not having failure, never having. And it's like, hey, you know what? You go to your first 100, you got to carry all your shit. We'll give you water. If you fail, you fail. these aren't
learn.
you're not supposed to be successful in 100-mile races, and
That's
why
why the drop rate
that's the
is,
whole point.
yeah,
They're
and that's why
hard.
a drop rate of a good 100,
Yeah.
and when I say good, I mean fairly easy 100. A drop rate is typically 20 to 30%. You start adding other factors in it, and it starts dropping below. Like last week's race, there were 29 starters, and I think 13 or 14 finished. So a drop rate of over 50%. You know what? You're not meant to
No.
finish every one of these if you don't have what it takes to finish it. It's physically a challenging sport, and nothing against. Everybody has to do their own thing, but marathons. And I love marathons. I've done over 200 marathons, and I'll continue doing it. That's where I started my running, was in marathons. But if you pick a big city marathon, you could be out there for 8 or 10 hours, and they don't advertise that. They'll say cutoff time. Like LA Marathon, I think they say cutoff time is 8 hours. But as you know, I always stay and cheer till the last one comes in. It's usually 11 hours for the last one to come in. And if they're still there, they'll give them a medal. A lot of times they'll leave. Sometimes I can convince them, hey, how many more on the course? Give me the medals. I'll give them to them. I'll text you their finish times. But, maybe that's the race to be in. But if you want to graduate up to a 100-mile race with cutoff times and with all these other issues, it's like you gotta nut up. You gotta toughen up here. There's no guarantees in this one. There's no participation medal. It's finish, or DNF.
Well, speaking of especially with the trail races, and also besides we having COVID, we're having a lot of social unrest with Black Lives Matter and being more inclusive and all these things, and not to bring it crazily, but trail running has a real problem in their attitudes. And one of the things people get upset with the races trying to go with less of this crew and trying to lessen their footprint input.
Right.
And I tell them, I go, well, look, what you're doing is really a privileged kind of thing to go run around on trails for a couple days. And I said, the thing is, I grew up pretty poor, lower middle class, because we moved around a lot. And I said, you don't understand, when we have a race in San Diego Park, and we're taking up that place for 2 days. We're taking over all these campgrounds and noise and all this stuff, that there's a family there that's their one weekend of vacation a year. And we're going over there and
never thought of that,
screwing up their weekend. They may not really care to watch a whole bunch of people running through their parking lot. They don't care. And so you're ruining, when I was a kid, my one weekend a year that I got to go hiking and fishing with my parents, my family, my weekend away from the life I lived in an apartment complex. I lived in apartments my entire life, and I only dreamed of being out and about. And so you're watching all these people, 200-300 people running, and then their huge entourages and the impact they're putting on that. And they don't realize that, the parks are public facilities, and you're just coming in here, and, it goes down to everybody, there's, people are making a lot of money using all these public lands and not giving back. And you have to, and when you look at that, that's the ultimate sign of privilege. And, not to get onto a rant, but, but that's the whole point of this podcast. And, what I say is completely mine. Me and Ed don't talk before or after. We kind of wing it like we wished you would wing races. Ed showed up at this race. He flew all the way across country with a backpack. And you know what? I'm starting to, when you showed me the pack the other day, I said, you know what? I sometimes would bring my carry-on luggage, because I have a flying cart, so I can get one for free. But I was like, I hate dealing with waiting for the luggage or worrying about it getting stolen, or not stolen, but lost. So I was going to start traveling with the amazing pack they gave me at the 55-hour race there in Houston that I did. They give you this really nice pack, and I thought it's a good size pack.
Snowdrop. That's Snowdrop, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and so, but so it's kind of, those are the kind of things. So, like I said, that's a thing that's great about you going on this journey, that we can talk about all kinds of things and different going on. So it looks like I just pulled up the Run for the Dreams, and we'll probably do something maybe on travel day, a little bit more about it, but that's the 24-hour. And they're saying it's going to be lonely out there, Ed. You only have 30 people.
Yeah, and the sad thing, and for me, it's part of the process, is I like to look and see who's the entrants and kind of check them out, because they're my competition. I want to be aware of, okay, who I need to be aware of and watch out for. And they don't post an entrance list.
Yeah, I
Some race
saw that.
directors, they just don't. They don't. I don't, for whatever reason, they don't. I don't know that there's
You
a
know why?
conscious.
I have friends who are race directors and they'll remain anonymous. It's because, I mean, people don't want other people seeing what they're gonna run, and partly, some I could say yes, there are people out there stalking people, and so they don't want someone to know their business and where they're going to
Hmm.
be. But it should be maybe at least the entrance can see the entrance.
Yeah.
And I mean but when you think about it, that's like maybe it's a rarity type of thing, but also
Right.
just have people, like, it's just too stressful if people know that I'm going to be running a race upcoming. I mean,
Oh.
I hear, and some people that use the race structure gotten at it because they like, yeah, it's amazing. Like, people are like, oh, I don't want people to know I'm signed up for this race. And you're like, well, then don't run the race. It's
Well, and that
just,
was one of my concerns
yeah,
when I was going to register it. I contacted the race director and said, "Look, I'm not familiar with your race, and I know that you did it last year, but I didn't see any race results. And then I don't know who's all doing it. I'd be happy to sign up for it, but here's my concern: I need to get my plane ticket sooner than later, so I can get
yeah.
the cheaper flights. I don't want to pay for a flight and then have you say, 'Oh, we didn't have enough people. We're canceling the race. We'll give you a refund.' Well, you're not going to refund my flight. Just for me, I gotta know. Tell me this is definitely going to happen. You have
Yeah,
enough
because
people."
before I got on with you, I pulled up your ultra sign up, and I noticed that your next race is Southern Discomfort. It doesn't show the race you're on, and then I
Right.
was like, oh, well, maybe it's not a run sign up, and I mean ultra sign up, not run sign up. And then I go, put in the name, and I'm now looking at it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
which it
that's
is an ultra sign up race. They just didn't check the box. And as you know, as a race director, and I've been a race director as well, when you're setting up an ultra sign up, it's just a box you check, show entrance list.
yeah.
And either you
Well,
check it or you don't. And obviously they didn't check it for whatever
Well, two
reason.
things
But
is
yeah.
that, one, people have all kinds of reasons why they don't want their name in public that they're going to do a race, but also partly too is if as a race director, which I know you don't like to put the intern list because you notice, like, because then people see and go, oh my gosh, you only have 6 people in the race. And then people go, oh, something must be wrong with the race. Where, of course, with this race, they're only capping it at 30 for 30 for the 24, and then 20 in the day, 12 in the night, 12. So
Right.
yeah. So
Yeah. I,
anyways,
I,
yeah,
I am a little concerned because if you look at the race route, it says 2-mile loop. What does it say? It doesn't say hilly. Uh, if you have it, maybe you can pull it up. But it
yeah.
is obviously not a flat 2-mile. And now I'm thinking, oh boy, I just did a 3-mile loop that wasn't flat.
It says
And that,
2 mile loop of rolling hills on grass and single track trail. And the pictures
yeah.
they've posted here pretty much in Kentucky and Tennessee pretty much look the same. It looks basically where you're at now.
Oh
So
boy.
it's going to be a similar. There's
So I'll
a
have a challenge.
there's this person is running through a green tunnel, and it's a wide trail, but it's covered in grass. And so yeah, you'll be
Which that does, grass is a slower surface to run on,
oh,
obviously, than,
yeah, it looks like
yeah.
there's another photo path, and it's grass.
Uh,
so yeah. So the good thing is
I'll have my work cut out for me, that's
it'll
for
be
sure.
it'll be easier on your legs.
Oh, you know what? And that's part of the thing about doing these races. We talked about this before we went online here. About remind me about the Silver Moon race, and you said, remember that hill? It's a 2-mile loop. Remember that one hill? And I think it was 2 years ago when I ran the race. It's like, no, I don't remember the hill because I have this runner's amnesia and I forget about the difficulties. Like someone will, a year or two from now, they'll say, hey, what about that Three Sisters race? How was that? Oh yeah, it was a beautiful trail and you had canopy the whole time. I'll forget that there was 9,000 feet of gain in the race and it was hot and humid, which is another thing. That for the first time in my running career, this is my 185th 100-mile finish. I've started over 200, but I've had my DNFs or drop downs, as you know. First time I ran without a shirt on, because I brought 2 shirts and in no time soaked,
Yeah.
completely soaked. And what good is it doing me? So, and my shorts were soaked. I mean, you can see. I don't know if you can see. There's a little bit of a kind
Oh
of a
yeah.
heat rash, and that's because the
Oh
whole
yeah.
time I'm running in shorts that are soaked. My shoes were soaked.
Oh
I
yeah.
got maceration on the top of my feet that I've never had, and but I'll forget about that in a year or two from now, and But I love what you were just saying is that, oh, well, at least it's going to be soft. It's a softer surface. So it'll be less pounding, which is a way you have to look at things. You can't
Yeah.
look at just the bad. You look at, okay, let's look at the good thing. The good thing is I have the opportunity to do a race. They're not counseling, which they could. And I have the ability to do a race. And luckily, I get pretty cheap flights. I search around and get the cheapest flight I can. And then many times, if I'm lucky, a race director will give me a comp or a decent discount. And and I get to go out and run, and I get to get
Yep.
these kind of cool things. So this is the buckle they gave us.
Cool.
So that's actually the first time I've seen the three sisters. Never saw them. I can't see three peaks sticking above the tree line. I don't know where they are, but they're somewhere hidden in that forest. But yeah, so
it was kind of funny that we got this far and you didn't mention the heat and humidity because the trail was so difficult for you. It's interesting because heat and humidity is we don't mind heat. It's the humidity. It's like when we were at the Dome, I thought it was super humid. And at the Dome, I actually ran in just one shirt, no collar shirt. And even when I was young and fast and fit and sub 3 hour marathon, I very rarely ran topless, just not my thing. And, just because of the rescue in the facility at the Dome, I would have definitely probably not ran with a shirt at all, but I didn't want to run around there and scare the hell out of you guys for in there, not out of my modesty, but yeah. So I get the now, like speaking of the humidity, are you starting to get a little bit better used to it?
I think I am. I think I'm acclimating to the humidity, which is good because I've got a whole bunch of races all coming out here in the Midwest, which are going to be hot and humid. And it's amazing, again, how the body does adapt.
Yeah.
Now the good thing is I had canopy almost the whole way. There are a couple of times we were in an open field. But that was the other thing is I didn't have to worry about sunscreen because, in fact, I took my sunglasses around the first loop and it's like, I don't need these. They're just carrying extra weight. So I just did when I came around after the first loop. And so the canopy made a big difference compared to 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I don't know this race coming up in Kentucky if we've got the cover.
It looks like you do. The few photos, yeah.
But then that means if there's trees, that means there's also roots. Trees have roots, and so there's trip hazards with that. So just have to be. And then if there's grass and leaves, they can hide roots. That's the one thing about grass.
That's what they're talking about, the big backyard. Maggie, who won, she says, Laz, there seemed like a lot more leaves out there on the course last night than the night before. And he, kind of insinuating Laz might have went and knocked more leaves down. He goes, well, we did have a storm roll in. Speaking of it, because, we were talking about keeping it simple, but there's tons of ultra people who constantly loves talking about nutrition and hydration. Can you talk about what you did for that here and how it's different than other places like dry races?
So I had 24 ounce the polar bottles, they're insulated, and I have color coded. So I had 2 that were red, 1 that's blue, and even though bless their hearts, there are people coming out volunteering, and if they're not ultra runners, sometimes they don't quite understand. But it's like red is Tailwind because that was the drink they had here, and that works fine for me. And then blue was water. It makes sense to me. Blue water. Yeah. I had 1 water bottle. So I had 3 of them, and I would come and drop it. I'm lucky that they were willing to fill it up for me because one thing is really difficult if you come and do a race by yourself, and I'm gonna have to do it next week, and you don't have anybody there to crew you, or even an aid station that will fill up water bottles, then you got to stop, fill up your water bottle, and that may not seem like a big deal, but I took a water bottle with me every single loop and finished it by the time I came back around. So you add that up, 24 ounces, and very few, maybe later on in the night, I was not drinking quite as much.
Yeah, usually don't.
Down. But 24 ounces times 32, I don't, whatever that is, I hydrated a lot because I was just sweating, just constantly sweating. Yeah. And so I drank Tailwind because that was the drink they had available, the electrolyte, and water. And I would pretty much probably a 2 to 1 ratio, 2 Tailwinds for every 1 water. And then nutrition wise, I'm like the scavenger of 100-mile runners. Right. I'll just eat whatever's available. I'll pick something and I trust my gut. I learned early on that if I look at something that doesn't look appetizing, there's a reason why my body's saying it doesn't look appetizing. And that's the sad thing is people, they force themselves to eat when they don't want to or don't feel like
Well,
it.
that comes back to
like it.
not to interrupt you. That comes back to my thing about being precious. Is I tell people, you need to live off the land like a bear when you're in an
Right.
ultra. Just walk up there and two things. There's a stereotype, but eat like a pregnant woman. Pregnant women like notorious for pickles and ice cream. So if pickles and ice cream sounds awesome, eat pickles and ice cream. And also stick with things that you liked when you were 5 years old. Because you liked it when you were 5, you're gonna like it when you're 55.
How funny.
And so many people, so many ultra runners have all these special products that they have to have, and so if anything goes wrong, and then how do you know that that special product actually works? So yeah, you just got to live off the land, like whatever's there, take it. And so I liked when you said that you just kind of forge and
yeah.
Yeah.
And so what I ended up doing is, and it's funny that you say eat like a 5-year-old because I ate a bunch of candy. So I'm actually, I eat usually pretty healthy during the week, and I've been vegetarian for almost my whole life. But and I actually didn't start eating meat again until I started doing ultras. Do I need it or not? There's some runners who are vegan and don't, and that's fine. I don't know. Sometimes it's just about taste. Like for example, they had bacon there, and I avoided it till like the very last couple of loops. And it's like, you know what? That just looks good. I'm going to get me some bacon.
Yeah.
And the fat and the salt in it it worked for me. But so I'd come in, grab a bag of chips for salt. Salt and sweet. That's pretty much what you're looking for the most part. And if you're you get your body to fat burn mode, you're gonna burn the stored energy that we all have anyway. If you can get to that point. And so I'd grab chips I recently had some food intolerance and allergy testing done and found out that I'm kind of intolerant to dairy, which I've known really all along because I always have issues with it. So I avoided any dairy, and I did have Cheez-Its, but I kind of figured there's not much cheese in a processed product like that. So yeah, I eat junk basically.
Well, and
I thrive on junk, and so and then they had peanut M&Ms and Reese's peanut butter cups, the little like Halloween size. And I'd grab those and eat them, stuff the garbage in my pocket, come around, dump it, and
Well,
but I didn't eat that much.
Well, like Dean Karnazes is, I don't know if he's vegetarian, but he says the same thing. Like when he's doing, he's vegetarian, but when he's in a race, he needs to fuel, and the quickest fuel is like a cheeseburger or a slice of pepperoni pizza. And he'll, at races, he'll eat that. And, kind of goes with the 80-20 rule, or maybe like 9, most of the time you try and eat clean and do what you need to do. But, when you're in a 100-mile race and you're trying to survive and, sorry, but, protein packs a wallop, and a lot of times, sometimes actually get sweeted out. Like myself, I'm not lactose intolerant, and so like I'm notorious for drinking milk in a race. I've drank a gallon of milk in a 100-mile race, and and cheese and milk act like Pepto-Bismol for me, and thankfully I have that ability. In fact, talking about, it's kind of interesting. You had the Mongols and the Chinese, and the Mongols, of course, rode horseback, and they could lactose. They could drink mare's milk and butter and cheeses and stuff. And one of the reasons they defeated the Chinese army, so there's 100,000 Mongols and there's a million Chinese. One of the reasons they were able to beat the Chinese in warfare was Chinese had to drag all their food with them because they were lactose intolerant. The Mongol could just reach over, get some milk from his mare, and keep on fighting. And it's a better source of fuel, the protein. So like I said, so it's kind of like, find what works for you, and that's kind of why you're supposed to do that also in training. But don't get married to certain things, because one, you end up, they don't work all the time, and two, you may just not have them. It's kind of like,
you just make work with what's available, or pack your own food. But I wasn't going to do that. So they had pickle slices. I definitely grabbed the pickle slices. Those always go down well. And then at one point they put out some rice balls that were seasoned. Those were really good. And some avocado. I'm always going to grab avocado. Being a California kid, I'm glad when like, it's funny, 2 weeks ago, I was in Kansas, went to a Subway, and, you pay extra for avocado at Subway, which is, fine. So, and I said, okay, avocado. Oh, we don't have avocado here. It's like, oh, okay, I guess I'm not in California anymore. Like Dorothy, Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore. Well, I'm not in California anymore but they had avocado and salt, and that just for me,
Yeah.
it's the right combination of pour a little salt on it, and so the right combination of fats. And so yeah, I forage. That's a good way to put it. Is I just come in and I'm quick. That's one thing.
Yeah.
You got to too many times people will come in. I've seen this happen at trail races, but also these loop races even can be
Yep.
worse, because if it's only 1 mile loop, if every single time you come in and you take a minute or two to figure out what you're wanting to eat, if you even
Yep.
need to every mile, but you just added a minute onto your, or 2 minutes onto your pace. So if you're out there pushing
Yep.
to do a 10-minute, 12-minute pace, you're not doing a 10, 12-minute pace. You're doing a 12 or 14-minute pace,
Yes.
and that adds up over time. I mean, if I hadn't been quick in and out, I wouldn't have made. I mean,
No.
who knows? I would have pushed myself even harder,
Yeah.
and I would have done my best, but it would have been, even closer. So I come in with a plan, and that's why I don't usually have drop bags at aid stations when I'm doing a trail 100, because I've seen too many times people will come in and they'll sit down, someone will bring their drop bag, and they're forging through it looking for, okay, what you should know what you need when you come into an aid station. I do a stacking technique.
Yeah.
Okay, I need this, but again, I don't even have drop bags. But
Yeah.
so I pretty much, when I was coming in, I had an idea. Okay, what do I want to get food?
Yeah.
Am I even going to stop for food? I would only stop in for food once every 3 or 4 laps.
Yeah.
And this is a 3-mile lap, which took me 45, 50 minutes
Yeah.
each lap. So I wasn't eating all that much. And most of the time it'd be like, if I started to feel my stomach feeling like, okay, I got to get some food in my belly, because I feel the gastric juice is kind of wanting something to work on. So sometimes it's just for comfort,
Yeah.
like a pregnant woman having, saltines,
Yeah. Well, no, it's definitely what you're talking about is kind of a lot of times really at the pace you're going, where you can, even the skinniest person can go 100 miles and not eat anything. Yeah, a lot of times they're eating and grabbing those, Reese's peanut butter cups and stuff as this kind of comfort. And also, I tell people, especially in 24-hour races, you should kind of try to eat when breakfast, lunch, and dinner are, just because you're used to that. So grab something, but you definitely have to not waste time. When I'm in races, I'm always amazed. People will hook up with me and stay with me, but then we roll through aid stations. I always just grab and go, and then that's where I always drop them, and then they have to like scurry back up to get me, and I drops, and I feel bad, but I'm just like, I got to keep rolling, and so that's constant start and stopping definitely just kills your momentum.
And that's sometimes I will, if I've got a good momentum going, like, okay, so I've been in over 200 100-mile races, and now this is my 185th. But 2 weeks ago in Kansas, I was working my way up and got up to second place, and the guy in front had been at 1.8 miles ahead of me, and now we're coming up to 80 miles, and he's less than a mile ahead of me. He's catchable. But I did a stupid thing. I had got a Subway sandwich. My buddy, this one required car crewing. So my buddy Tommy Lynetta, who amazingly volunteered to fly out and crew me at that race, and so we came at one point by a Subway. He got me a sandwich, and I ate 6 inches, half of it. During the heat of the day, I was walking. It was super hot, exposed, humid. So I was just power walking and ate that, and had time, and my body was working too hard. But then in the night, I picked up my pace and was doing pretty well. I was doing sub 12-minute miles, which doesn't sound fast, but if you're 80 miles into a race, a 12-minute pace is a decent pace. And so my reward to me in my mind was, okay, when I get to mile 80, I get the other half of that sandwich. Bad mistake, because it was too much food, and I'd been pushing my body. So the blood was all, to my large leg muscles. And then I just instantly cramped up, and that was it. My chance of winning that race, not only did I lose that chance, but I lost 2 other spots. I dropped into 4th. I still had a 23:02 finish. I'm happy to have had the finish, and I got 3rd male, so that's still a podium, I suppose. But the mistake I made was a stupid rookie mistake. Every rookie knows, only eat so many calories at a time, and I just was being complacent and like, oh, I can do this. So I was more aware of that in this race, because obviously, as I said, I was pushing myself, trying to make that 24-hour cutoff, and was a bit sparser with the way I would spread the food out. And it made sense and worked for me. And a lot of times I just wouldn't feel like I needed any food. So I'd go hours without any. So, it's amazing what the
Yeah.
body can do if you train it properly.
Well, I was going to say that I often tell my athletes that, you need to eliminate decisions in races. And the thing is, people may often, no, it kind of goes against but you're not making a real decision when you come in the aid station and go, that looks good, pickles look good, grab that, that, because there you're using more of a base thing. But when you're trying to do thinking kind of decisions, humans are terrible at decisions, as I talked about earlier, facts and whatnot. So it's better just to eliminate the decisions you have to do, like bringing extra shoes and extra socks. That means you have to decide, when do I change them? How do I change them? You start adding in so many levels of complexity. And so it's kind of like, put the socks on, put the shoes on when the gun goes off, and just wear them. And like, oh gosh, you got to run through creeks and streams. So who cares? Just because if you're still moving forward. If you take your shoes off, like you did kicking you had those issues and stuff, then you see them, and then that just kind of takes you out of the mindset. So, and talking also, I want to say, going into an aid station, I often have like checklists in my head. And my first thing is get rid of my trash, so I don't have to carry it around. So like for me, it's like throw away trash, and then hydration, nutrition. But yeah, you got to come in. And so I often talk about, like, don't be out there just completely brain dead, mindless. You're out there for a long time. You can turn it off maybe, but when you're like a mile, you're 10 minutes out from the aid station, go through and like a flight checklist, like, this is what I need to do coming in. Don't just come in and then start thinking about it. Because in a while, like if you'd wasted 30 seconds per 30 seconds per lap, you wouldn't have gotten your 100 finish. We had to make it up somewhere else. It's
and
free
you really
time.
can't even 30. By the time you get in, any little thing you do takes up a minute or two.
Yeah.
So
like your longest lap was a potty break. It was an hour. Yeah, you were very consistent. I know you said, Ed, you had another meeting, so I'm going to let you go, because isn't it at 5:30? At 8:30 your time?
It's 5:30. I need to start getting ready for it. So I'm okay. I did want to mention back to what we talked about earlier. That's why it's a different race if I can come with a crew and you go without a crew, because one thing that a crew does for you is they think for you. Like Badwater, people look at the Badwater results, and typically Badwater results are about 70 to 80% finish rate. And if you look at just results, you would think, well, what's the hype about Badwater? How could it be that tough if there's such a high finish rate? I've done races where there's a 40% drop. Well, there's a couple reasons for that. One is that Chris, the racer, is pretty selective on who gets into the race, because he wants people that are going to finish, not people that are going to just, a bucket list. I'll go do Badwater. And they know nothing about it. Have never crewed. Anyway, so that's one. The other thing is that you spend a ton of money to do the race. It's pretty expensive, not only the entry fee, but all the expenses of, having hotels for your crew. And then you also, you've got crew that are there constantly with you that are thinking for you. Badwater actually, it spoils me, because I am like king for a day or a day and a half or 2 days, because you just move forward. The work is crew. I crewed before I ran the race. In 2010, I crewed for my friend Brian Recor. That's a ton of work, because you have to constantly be thinking. When you're running a race like that, when you have a roving aid station that moves along with you every couple miles, that changes everything. And having coming into an aid station where you have someone that can do your thinking for you, and then going out on the course, and now you're at whatever, usually most races pacers allow them to pick you up at 50, 60 miles into the race. Now you've got someone that's there to encourage you. When and that's different when you're going solo on, everything's coming from your own head, and you're getting the voices that are telling you, you should quit, and you don't have a voice to counter that, say, hey, you're doing great, let's just get you to the next aid station. And so that goes back to what we talked about earlier. It does make a really big difference, having crew or not crew. And coming into aid stations, if you've got good crew that are going to get you in and out quick, if you have crew, take advantage of them. They're not just there for being cheerleaders. They should really have a plan, and a specific plan to get you through the race. Okay, get in. Here's what we need. Now do this. Get back out there. Anyway, all right. So we can. I just want to throw that in there, but we can wrap it up.
No, I mean, wrap it up, because definitely I don't want you to miss. Like you almost missed your flight.
That was really close. Yeah,
So I was kind of like, and if you listen to that podcast, it's quite a bit of noise at the end. And I should have dawned on me, flown enough that they're calling people onto, and I didn't realize it was his plane. So now on, we need to when the noise
be
gets,
aware.
when it gets really loud, we'll go, hey, is that, they're calling in your flight?
Especially if when they call you by name, Eddinghausen, we're looking for Ed Eddinghausen.
I didn't
when
hear
they're ready
that
to
part.
close the gates. Yeah, I didn't hear it either, but I've had that happen before where they're calling 2 or 3 names because they want to close the gate and get going. If they can get an early start with everybody full in the plane, that's even better. But yeah, so we got. But see, I live in the moment, and I that's the great thing about running 100-mile races is all the worries of life you could put behind you, COVID, whatever. It's like I'm just here to enjoy the moment, and even when things get down and tough in a race, you know what? You can look around and go, how blessed am I to have the opportunity and the ability to do this. I should not complain because there's so many people that would trade places with me in a heartbeat. And so you got to do that. Live in the moment, enjoy the moment, and look at the good stuff. Yeah. But anyway, all right.
You're definitely when you're in these, people ask me why I do these races and why I don't want to let go of them, sort of, is because, there is no past or future in these races. You're totally in the present, and especially, and the camaraderie with all the people at 3 a.m. So, but it's a trade-off. So, and you don't get the same kind of fix when you're doing pacing and crewing. So let's end it there so you can go off and do the other things you need to go do. And as always, my saying is, stay healthy, be boring, not epic, except maybe on race day, as it obviously was pretty epic to finish with less than 3 minutes on the clock, and let you end the podcast here with some words.
Well, my phrase I like to say is be kind to each other, be gentle on yourself. Take one step today that could change the world tomorrow for good. And group hugs, Andy, once again, thank you for doing this with me. It's always a lot of fun. And so we'll connect up again, I guess, on Friday, during the pre-race at the airport, getting ready to do yeah, because I have a layover. We'll figure it out. Anyway, check back with you during the week. All right.
Until next time, see you later, Ed. Talk to you later.
Okay.
And I still don't know how to